Greetings and welcome back to Weird Wizard's Winter Wonderland! Yes indeed, we are back in what I think we can all agree is rapidly becoming the premier winter resort retreat for minions of wizards everywhere, or at least minions of wizards in my particular subset of reality. And as you can see, things are a little bit different this time around because by request I have decided to record the entire process. I've left my OBS, my Orb of Brilliant Seeing, running throughout the entire build process, almost to the build process. Actually, a lot of the detail at the end, sadly, was not recorded, but all of the main stuff has been recorded, and I'm going to edit it together. A lot of it will be sped up, and we'll cut out a few of the less important or the less interesting bits, but you can see the entire process as it plays out. Right now, I'm just kind of faffing about with the little slope there and building a way up so that people don't have to clamber up the snow. Because up here is where we're actually going to do the building. But whilst I build my little stairway, what are we going to actually build? What's the main build going to be about? Well, as Avenger Penguin pointed out, the main thing that we're missing at the moment, if this is meant to be a resort, like a winter holiday resort for the minions, is somewhere for them to stay. I mean, we've got the snowy cottage, but let's face it, that can comfortably accommodate maybe 4 minions, maybe sort of 6 or 8 if they really squish in there. And that's not enough. Although you don't see them, I've got hundreds of minions, literally hundreds of them, all like hoarding around, generally wanting to come and hang out and engage in winter sports like the Bobcart Run and other stuff, which presumably exists here. So we need a proper accommodation block. We need a proper lodge, like a Snowfall Lodge, I think is what I'm going to call it. And we're going to build it here, halfway up the mountain, right at the base of the ski lift, so that they can just step right out the door and be in the middle of it all, whether they want to use the new beginner slope that I kind of created at the very beginning of the video. I know I didn't say that's what I was doing, but clearly that's what I was doing. Or whether they want to take the ski lift all the way up to the top and come down the Bobcart Run, or do some cross-country skiing or something of that nature. They're going to be perfectly situated, and of course they've got beautiful views over the valley and Reamthursa himself. So right now I'm just creating the foundations, and to do that I wanted it to sit more or less in the landscape. I didn't want to have to destroy too many trees. I think in the end I only destroyed 1 tree, and I didn't want to flatten a huge section of ground, so I did kind of flatten it a little bit, but I tried to step the structure down somewhere, and you'll see as it develops it sits, I think, pretty comfortably within the landscape, which was a key part of my plan from the beginning. And from time to time when I'm doing these builds, as you can see happening right now on the screen, I'll kind of go off and I'll do something unrelated. And this is, I think, part of the way my thought process works. I need to, if I'm stuck on how to proceed, if I'm not entirely sure, because it's not pre-planned, I just go off and I do something like this, some kind of like little detail, some kind of little touch somewhere, and it gives my subconscious mind time to work on the problem at hand and decide how it's going to proceed with the main build. So that's what I'm doing right now. Plus it looks nice, and it's very important for the minions to have a nice attractive stairwell with a safety banister when they're coming up to here, because that's what happens. They don't have a ski lift to get up here. I might put a cable car in all the way from the valley below at some point to get them to the hotel, but that'll be a future build if that is what's going to happen. So this is the foundation. This is the kind of the footprint of the building. It's going to be a U-shaped building. We're going to have left and right hand wings to the building, and we're going to have like a nice courtyard area in the middle, like a bit at the back. I'm not entirely sure at this point what I'm going to do with the back, whether that's all going to be accommodation as well, or whether I'm going to do something else, because it sits in that kind of dip in the landscape, so there's not going to be any windows or anything in the lower floor here. So we'll see what happens when we get to that. It's also going to have to be built around that tree, because I really like going up the ski lift feeling like there's trees on either side. So I really kind of had a hard rule that I wasn't going to destroy any trees other than that 1 tree that I destroyed earlier. That was okay because it was kind of off to the side a little bit. So building up the walls now, I wanted to kind of strike a balance between having plenty of light inside but also making the rooms feel cozy. So I decided to go for alternating windows and wall pieces, and then offsetting that between the stories to create a slightly less uniform appearance to the building. And I try and carry that through pretty much all the way on all sides of the building at all times, and more or less succeed, I think. Now this little area that I'm working on at the moment works out really nicely in the end because it's kind of like a sub-level. It's like below the rest of the building. So I give it its own exit and it creates this almost like a little suite at the end. You'll see when we eventually get there. It's not going to be in this video though. Now I'm just laying down the foundations for the walkway that's going to wrap around the inside of the courtyard, and at this point I wasn't really sure exactly what I was going to do with this walkway, whether it was going to wrap all the way around the building, whether I was going to have it sort of like raised up as it is now above the level of the courtyard, or whether I was going to raise the courtyard up as well. And you'll see in the end I actually raised the courtyard up because I think it works better to connect the indoor and the outdoor spaces, which is something that I wanted the building to be like a holiday resort does, you know, like it's meant to be somewhere nice for the minions to go. The whole idea is perhaps not like super duper luxurious, but nice, you know. I want it to be a nice environment. I want it to be like nice views in all directions and things like that. So the courtyard I think is really important, and also the courtyard is going to act as a kind of staging area for the minions to go off on their winter holiday activities. Now, as you can see, the next stage was to add in these kind of arches, which is the second kind of phase, I guess, of the inside-outside connect. And I put them in all around like this, and looking at it, they look kind of low, don't they? It looks very squat. It doesn't look grand or impressive enough, and it kind of feels a little bit cramped. So I decide to knock them all down and start again. Not an uncommon occurrence, if I'm honest with you, but sometimes it just is necessary. You experiment, you see what works, whether it looks good, and if it doesn't, well, try something else. And in this case, I tried putting pillars down first to raise those arches up, which I think absolutely has the effect I'm looking for. It creates much grander arches, and it also creates a visual distinction between the first and second stories of the building, as you'll see once everything else kind of is in place. So I'm really happy actually with the way this turned out, and I really like these sort of arches. It gives it a slightly Romanesque feel as well, almost like a sort of a Roman manor or a Roman villa, something like that, but obviously in a snowy winter medieval resort of a wizard. Anyway, now that we've got the courtyard kind of blocked in, I start to work on the actual wings themselves. These are where the accommodation will be, where the rooms, the suites, the holiday lets, whatever you want to call them, will be constructed, and where the minions will actually come and hang out and spend their time. So it needs to be kind of reasonably spacious. I didn't want these to be tiny, tiny rooms. In fact, there's actually, what I want is there to be a whole variety. So there'll be big rooms, there'll be little rooms, there'll be multi-room rooms, if that makes any sense, and there'll be just single little pokey rooms with just a tiny little window. But every room does need to have at least one window. That was kind of a rule of mine. So we continue this alternating window blocks and normal wall blocks all the way around as far as we can. Obviously we can't do it along that back wall there because of the way the snow like piles up against the side of the building. It's not ideal, but I did want to try and disturb the landscape as little as possible, which is why we end up with this kind of cutting into the side of the hill effect. And actually it kind of works. When we get to the end, you'll see like that back section it doesn't have any windows, so we kind of use it for a different purpose, but it kind of works out quite nicely. Anyway, moving on with the actual construction, we're building the walkways now, which are going to wrap around the inside of the courtyard and provide access to all the rooms. So all of the rooms will exit directly onto the walkway, which itself will be effectively outside, although sheltered within the courtyard and within the structure of the building, which I think actually provides a nice kind of holiday resort feeling to the whole thing. Like, I didn't want it to be like a hotel where you go in and you walk down endless corridors and find, like, you know, little rooms and things like that. I wanted it to feel like each room was its own self-contained little holiday apartment for the minions to come and get away from the drudgery of living in the minion village and generally faffing about. So there you go. You can kind of see how it's starting to come together now. We've got 3 rooms on that flank, that wing of the building, and that'll be repeated obviously as we go up and as we add levels. And you can also see the beginnings there of the way that the walkway system is going to work, the way the sort of like internal balconies, I guess you'd call them, maybe, I don't know. Now, I did this build before the Gods of Medieval Engineers' most recent update, which may actually have solved the problem that I'm fixing here, but you can see there's a little bit of Z fighting going on, where the floors are clipping through the walls there. So I used these pieces just to mask that, and also to break up the silhouette of the building, and to make it look just a little bit more interesting. Instead of just being a flat wall with a few holes for windows, it's now got actual ledges built into it. Now, I didn't have like a set number of floors in mind when I started building the structure, but I decided that it definitely needed at least one more, so I added one more. We've got another walkway running around, so there's going to be another layer of rooms on this top sort of level here. Is this the second floor? Third floor? I suppose that whether you count ground floor as floor 1 or not, the eternal question, I don't know. I suppose it can be whatever I dictate it to be, because I am the unrivaled, the unquestioned master and lord of this realm. At least, that's what I like to think. Anyway, so the top floor, as I think it is ultimately going to become, is going to be made out of these wood and plaster pieces to change it up a little bit so that it's not just a massive stone building, and B, because they actually have much nicer, bigger windows, so these top floor rooms are going to be potentially the nicest rooms. In fact, doubly so, because they will also have nice high ceilings, nice high sloping ceilings, because of the way that roofs work in Medieval Engineers. There are no flat roofs that I could really do for this. I don't think I would want to do a flat roof anyway. Although it might be nice to have some flat roofing options available at some point in the future. Maybe. Gods of Medieval Engineers. That would be nice. That would be very nice. So there we go. We've got the windows in, alternating back and forth, as you can see. And now we just need to fill in the spaces here with little wooden walls, just flat wooden plaster walls all the way around to there, because of just the fact that it's like an odd number of tiles, an odd number of blocks wide, because I didn't plan ahead when I was building the building. Never plan ahead. Why plan ahead? You don't need to. Just start building. That's what I say. And my word is law, at least here in the Winter Wonderland. Obviously, we need floors, because otherwise the minions will just fall down. They really do need floors, minions. They don't have, like, the wizarding flying powers, of course, that I have. And even I, to be honest with you, prefer to have floors, because, you know, without floors, it's difficult to put things on them. I mean, you can't really have a bed without a floor, because it'll just plummet down to the next level. And likewise for chests and things. Actually, I say that, in the world of Medieval Engineers, it's probably quite possible to have a bed and a chest without having a floor for it to rest on. But that's, of course, employing magic, and is probably frowned upon by the minions, who, let's face it, will still find the room effectively unusable if there's just a floating bed and a floating chest and nothing else in the room for them to, stand upon and things. Anyway, let's move on. Let's move on and get this building finished up, because we are nearly at the point where the kind of superstructure of the building is finished. We've got, I think this is going to be the top floor, as I said before, and we just need to put like the rest of the walls in place. Obviously there's a few floors and things that need to be put in place. There's some dividing walls internally that we need to put in place, and then of course there is the roof, the last stage, the crowning glory, if you will, in the kind of main structure. Yes, sorry for the pun, it was terrible, but nonetheless, the roofs, this is the thing about roofs in Medieval Engineers, it's what transforms a box into a building, I find. It's where the thing suddenly comes together and starts to look like somewhere you would actually want to go and be and hang out. And that's, I think, especially true of this building. It doesn't have a super complicated roof. It's nothing that I'm sure hasn't been done many times before. Just a quick check there of structural integrity. I was concerned at this point because I hadn't paid any attention to structural integrity, and roofs used to be incredibly heavy, and it was not uncommon for buildings to come crashing down when you tried to put the roof on. But the gods of Medieval Engineers have toned that down over the various changes they've made to the world, so I'm pretty hopeful that this entire structure won't collapse under its own weight. Obviously, we want to put the little triangular bits in to make sure that we've got proper support everywhere that is needed. One there as well. It seems to be holding together so far. We add another layer in, and I'm going to go for just basically all the way up. So we've got like sloping on one side and then just a sheer drop on the other side, which I think is pretty striking, actually. I think it creates a really interesting looking building. And I did want the walkway to be covered, so I just do this little like single piece. We need a bit of support for it. This single sloping piece of roof there, and we'll wrap around the inside of the courtyard, covering the walkway so that it doesn't get snowed on, because, you know, you need to watch out for that. If the snow built up on the walkways, they could collapse, maybe, or like people might not be able to get out of their doors if they got snowed in. So these are important considerations, I think you'll find, when building winter retreat hotel lodges in mystical worlds when you're a wizard. We continue to build the building up. We continue to build up, obviously, so that we can support the roof all the way around. And inside the courtyard area, we have like this little space here, and I didn't really know what to do with it because there wasn't gonna be like rooms on the other side, on the back side in the same way. So I decided to just kind of like build it all along like this, so create effectively like a corridor. And this is going to be pretty much, I think, the only internal corridor in the building, which I think kind of makes it a bit more special. I think it does anyway. I like to think that it's special, even if it's a relatively straightforward building. I think the way that it's turned out has given it a certain character of its own. And finishing off this section, I wasn't entirely sure how to proceed. In the end, I decided to kind of take the exterior wall back, so that the main roof section is effectively the same size on all three corners of the building, on all three sides of the building. It's the same height. You get a nice clean appearance to the roof then. Obviously there's a little issue with a tree, but we'll look at that later. And what that means is we then have this kind of like double height section of sloping roof at the back of the building, which again actually works out really nicely, I think, because it creates a distinct difference between the rear of the courtyard section and the two sides of the courtyard section, which only have the single height bit of sloping roof. So I think things like that, actually, it's little touches that can make the difference between a building that looks just kind of boring and boxy and a building that looks interesting and varied. At least that's what I'm telling myself right now. And if you don't agree with me, then you're wrong. Because I'm the wizard, and this is my world! My world! Sorry. I had a bit of an Agent Smith moment there. It won't happen again, I can assure you. So we're nearly done here with the exterior of the building. It's pretty exciting. We just put this last bit of roof on, and you can see. Well, I say the last bit of roof, and then we pan to the side, and yeah, okay. There's a whole wing of the building that's still missing its roof. Pay attention, man, pay attention. So whilst we finish off these last bits of roof, I just want to make a request. I'm going to make the same request again a little bit later, and I don't know if any of the gods of medieval engineers are out there and paying attention, but what I would really, really love to see in Medieval Engineers is chairs that we can sit in, like in that spacey engineering game that I have heard, spacey engineering universe that I've heard about. It would really help with things. Anyway, look, there we go. The roof is now complete, and the main structure of the building is now complete, and you can see this is effectively the way that it is going to look. There will be lots of details. There's lots of things that we can add here and there, but I'm really happy with this. I'm really happy with... I seem to have forgotten to put the floor in here. Hold on, let me just quickly put the floor in. As I was saying, minions really, really get unhappy if they walk into a room and there's no floor, because gravity tends to kick in, and there is pain. And anger and recriminations. Look, there's more floors that need to be done. Clearly, the entire interior of the building still needs to be finished off, and there is a whole host of details. One of the things that I like to do, obviously, again, as I said, this was done before the Z fighting issue was potentially resolved, so I'm not sure if this was strictly necessary, putting in things like these beams and things, but even if it's not strictly necessary, I think it really helps to make a building look more interesting. And, having things like overhead beams, which actually stick out substantially from the roof, having supports where supports would make sense, even though they don't actually provide any structural support, it's still a good idea to have them. And of course, for health and safety reasons, it's good as well. And of course, I don't need to worry too much about health and safety because I am the ultimate wizarding lord and master of this entire realm. Although, having said that, those health and safety inspectors, they'll find you. It doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter if you're in a pocket reality of your own creation. They will find you. And not to mention the fact that actually things like this look good. They make the building look much better and much more visually interesting. So for that reason, and not because I'm not scared of health and safety inspectors. Are they here? No, of course they're not. It's just a good idea to put these things in. I think it looks good. I think it makes the building look that much more lived in and that much more impressive. Plus, I don't want the minions to be injuring themselves, We're probably going to lose enough when they're going down the bobcart run, frankly, and other potential activities. So, well, maybe like plunging off of the cable car to their deaths, because let's face it, can you imagine trying to actually get a minion to ride the cable car up? Oh, I'm going to have to do that now, aren't I? I'm going to have to see if I can spawn a minion in the cable car and see if he'll survive the trip up to the top. Well, that's for another video, obviously. That's for another video. Right now, I'm just going to finish off putting in these various little supports and of course, guardrails and other things. We'll put them on either wing as well, so all the way around, both wings. Making sure that we get them as evenly distributed as possible. I even put them, look, into these little arches because it just breaks up that appearance and it makes it look more lived in, I think. Anyway, that I think will do for now. We have constructed the main exterior part of the building. We've done a little bit of the detail work. There is a lot more detail work still to come. But that, of course, we'll all have to wait for the next episode. Do let me know as well what you think about this episode, if you want to see more build videos where I actually show the build process as it happens, or if you prefer the walk-aroundy type episodes that I've been doing more recently. But until next time, thanks a lot for watching, everybody. I have been Weird Wizard, and I will see you later.